So stages of clay, what we have is wet, leather hard, greenware, bisque, and then the final glaze firing here. And so this is a pretty typical process of the stages that we work with in ceramics classes. Right? And it might seem, obvious to people, but just the way that it is, right? So I just wanted to point some things out because sometimes there can be some confusion. I mean, wet clay, it's malleable, right? It still has a lot of water content in there. So you can form the clay, mash it up into a ball, reform it, it's fairly malleable, right? So as long as I still have a good amount of water in my clay, I can change the shape of it, mash it up into a ball, start over again if I don't like it. Clay has about 30% to 25% water content in it. So, water is an important material in the clay itself. Like it keeps the particles bonded together, and clay is nice and sticky when wet, right? So as it dries, we get to the leather hard stage, or also cheese hard, right? So it's carvable. So it's perfect for trimming, right? My video's flipped, but that's my name backwards, right? So general rule of thumb, if you can carve into it and it has a nice firm grip and it still has the possibility to wipe your carving away with your thumb, I'm kind of smoothing that out. You can see that happening. It's a good sign of leather hard. And then another, sign of leather hard, it starts to gain structure because some of that water content is evaporated. So if this was a wet piece of clay, a wet slab, it would slump with me picking up this end of the clay slab, right? It still has some kind of malleable qualities to it. So if I was gonna make a slab cylinder, I can, still use this, right? This kind of works out to be kind of a fun little sushi plate, right? And this is greenware or bone dry clay. Bone dry clay is all the water is completely removed and evaporated from the clay body. It's really fragile. It's not malleable at all. So if you're trying to change the shape of it or picking up from the rim, you want to be careful because it breaks fairly easy, right? So if you guys are working with your work, you want to make sure that you handle it correctly at the proper spot. Because if you're, being really strong, handling your work, like picking a bowl up, trying to get it back into shape, it can crack and break just like I demonstrated. Right? And from there, we'll fire it. Once this is the bisque stage of the clay body, this is no longer clay. From the firing between greenware or bone dry stage to bisqueware, it becomes ceramic, right? So the high temperature starts a crystallization process the molecules change a little bit, and your bisqueware is really strong. It has, a crystallized structure. The dry clay does not, right? So, I mean, I could probably break this in half if I really wanted to, but it would take a lot of force, right? So this is beginning to be finished stage of ceramics. The bisqueware is porous, and so it'll absorb moisture. There's a lot of water content in glaze, and when you put your bisqueware into glaze or brush it on, it'll have a nice powder coat that is left on the surface, because that moisture content from the glaze will absorb into the bisque, and we're ready for firing. And then this is the finished glazeware. So this is the stage where nothing really else can be done with it. If you don't like it, then you can always make another one, right? When fired in up to glaze temperature, the clay body is vitrified. It doesn't absorb any water, and for all intents and purposes becomes permanent, right? So, pottery shards are a huge thing in anthropology, and they use pottery shards to study cultures and things like that. So potentially, in like 100 years from now, when people find pottery shards from us, they'll have something to study, and which is kind of like a mind trip. So glazeware will last longer than the maker, which is really kind of a fascinating thought. Like paintings, wood pieces, and other historical artifacts, have a large potential for decomposing and things like that. Ceramics usually holds up pretty well. So just kind of geeking out about that. And the last things that I want to talk about, you can think about these stages in groups. So the wet, the leather hard, and the greenware can all be recycled in our buckets over here. The bisqueware and the glazeware, we don't recycle here, because it forms a crystalline structure when taking up to high temperature. It's no longer recyclable. So don't put the bisqueware in the reclaim buckets. It happens, right? Another way to tell the difference between bisqueware and greenware is the sound, right? So the bisqueware has a really high pitch tone from that crystallized structure being formed. Same with the glazeware, right? The bisqueware has a thud, right? Has a really low thud noise to it. And same with the leather hard stage, and then the wet stage, which absorbs most of the impact, which keeps the noise level dampened, right? So again, wet, leather, and greenware can all be recycled in our buckets here, and then the bisqueware and the glazeware cannot be recycled, right? So if there's any questions about that, let me know. Are there any questions about the stages of clay right now? Cool. Okay. Well, good.